All righty, boys and girls, welcome back to another episode of the Red, White, Claret, and Blue Show with your hosts, Alex and Chris Pansy, French Boy Condit, your American villain voices, and as always, serving up the lukewarmest of lukewarm opinions. Very, very, very important to clarify that today because we got a little bit of a different format, knowing that we missed the midweek. Had some stuff go on. Work is work. Unfortunately, we're not paid to do this full time yet. So, we're going to jump right in. We're going to dispatch with the usual pleasantries. We will just say, shout out Godfather Pat and all the boys out in Charlotte, because they were able to at least get us an introduction. I won't say that we've secured it just yet, but we got an introduction for another really exciting interview coming up soon. More details when we have been able to reach out to this specific person's representation. And once we do, you know what we do. We'll hit them with the hard-hitting questions and bring everybody what they're looking for. No, we're very soft. Everybody, please love us and come on. So as I said, we're going to do a little bit differently today, because otherwise Chris and I would be here for 2.5 hours, and the White Lotus finale is tonight, and I'm not going to have it ruined. So instead of doing our full deep dive recaps of both Brighton and Forest, we've picked out, what do we have here? Seven cold water statements that will allow us to kind of analyze both these matches simultaneously, talk about where we're going for the rest of the season before we dive into our usual PSG recap. We have not seen each other's responses to these yet, so we're going to be reacting live just the way that you guys are going to hear this. Before we dive in, Chris, Piper, no, you want to give the people who are listening a little explanation of your sub name here?
Oh yeah, I put on if you're watching on YouTube, please watch on YouTube. I put underneath my normal name, I put Piper no, because that's a repeated line from the White Lotus season 3, and tonight is the season finale. And both Alex and I, as he mentioned already, are just trying to get through this pod so that we can get to our televisions and watch. And please feel free to pay for that plug, HBO, that just hit, at least a dozen or 2 dozen people. You're welcome.
Chris, are you in danger?
You're not a Buddhist.
Well, you know who's not in danger, Chris? It is Aston Villa with back-to-back wins this year. Boom.
There you go.
And so we will dive into the first of our 7 cold water statements. And that is with the upturn in fortunes. We have now had clean sheets in 5 of our last 7 after what felt like 2 in 42 matches prior to that. So, Chris, cold water statement is, with these clean sheets, Unai has clearly figured out Aston Villa's defensive problems.
I would pour a little bit of cold water on that, only because I think a lot of it is also that we are healthier at the back than we have been for most of the season. And that obviously helps things. And you have more cohesion. I mean, Pau is coming back and played, and you're getting good minutes from Mings, even Garcia, although I think he may have had an injury coming off in the Forest game, but even Garcia
Unclear,
played.
yeah.
What's that?
Unclear, but yeah. Even Garcia played very well in his time in the Forest game. So I think a lot of it is just health, and we are finally not just there, but particularly at the back, healthy, more so than we've been for the bulk of this season. So it's I think a lot of it comes down to we've just got most of our squad back now. And that's front and back, and I think that helps, Yeah, I'm definitely pouring some cold water on this one. No surprise. And that's not to say that we shouldn't be commended for what we've done. And to your point, I think there certainly have been changes that have improved the defense. I just don't know that I would say that Unai has clearly figured out the problems. Brighton, super composed. You saw us sat in well. I thought that we really limited their opportunities. Their biggest opportunities were a couple claims for penalty more than anything that they created from open play. Forest, on the other hand, despite only conceding once, could have easily scored 4 or 5. So, and and their misses I put more down to poor finishing rather than, great defensive work by Villa that ultimately blocked it at the last second.
They were tight ended in a lot of them, is what I would say, though. You're like a lot of the
totally. I'm just saying the opportunities were there, and we have
Yeah.
played games earlier this season where those have been converted. But
Yeah.
I see kind of 4 main points as to why we've had improved defensive performances, particularly over the last 7. And to the chagrin of many Villa fans that seem to just think, oh, it's Tyrone Mings starting, and all of a sudden we get clean sheets. That's not one of my 4. As great as he's been, we also got one with Powell. It's not it. Now, to your point, health. I think having a true defensive midfielder and Boubacar Kamara in front of the defense makes a huge, huge benefit. It's not John McGinn. As great as John McGinn is, he's not a defensive midfielder. And so I think having that shield and now having it with Onana and good legs in the first half against Forest is a big factor in why we've turned up. Look at what Man City is conceding without Rodri in the middle. You need that number 6. But 2, and I think this is really important as well, adjusting the offensive buildup and the impact on the defense. So prior to this recent run, you had Boubacar Kamara dropping into a back 3. And I've talked repeatedly on this podcast about how I think that actually kind of neuters one of his best attributes offensively, which is ability to get on the half turn and drive at the defense and cause problems and create a little bit more as opposed to just playing with the whole field in front of him. Against Brighton, he was never dropping into a back 3. We really played with the back 2 and had him further forward in a true holding midfielder position. I think this keeps the defense honest, but then I've also talked about the timing. When he drops into the back 3, there's a lag when the other team turns and counters at us for him to then jump into the middle to be able to break up play. When he's a little bit further forward, not in the back 3 with the defense, when they try and create something, he can either put in the challenge or intercept the pass a lot more easily. And so I think that stifles a lot of opponents coming at us. And then even with Onana, I was watching him. He was really only playing like what I'm calling like a hybrid 2.5 back. And so he was definitely not in a back 3, but he was kind of further forward. You would see Disasi move to the middle and Onana be in the back and a little bit more reserve, but he was still that extra couple yards in front of the defense. Again, same thing with timing, allowing him to drive forward with the ball. Also health. I think having a traditional right back in Matty Cash and in the last game, Garcia really helps because as great as Konsa is out there and Disasi, as good as we've said he can be off the dribble in the pass, having someone who is really attacking, who can really not let the opposition send their left back forward, send their winger unimpeded, just stifles their transition a little bit and gives them a little extra something to think about, a little something extra that they need to work for so they don't have that energy going the other way. And then the last one that I think probably might be the biggest factor is we can't forget the opposition that we've gotten these 5 clean sheets against as well. 2 were against championship teams in Cardiff and Preston. 1 was against 10 men Bruges, who I don't think that anyone thinks is some amazing offensive output. Brentford is certainly a good clean sheet. And then Brighton, kind of good. They're definitely on a downswing now, but like that's good as well. But it's not like we were getting 5 clean sheets against top half Premier League opposition either. So has the defense improved? Yes. But I wouldn't say that all our defensive problems are solved, or I think that we're going to roll through, 10 more clean sheets over our last 10 matches of the season.
That's a fair point.
On to number 2.
Brighton is top half, I would point out. That's all. I
said not all 5 were against top half, Chris.
Well, I mean, but that's almost the entire top half. Come on, man. I think your expectation might be a little higher.
One of 5?
Yeah, no. I'm saying if you're not happy that we've only got clean sheets against who we play, like that's I think
no. I'm very happy that we got clean sheets against who we played. The question and the thing that I'm responding to is that all our defensive problems are solved. And I'm saying that the evidence of the 5 clean sheets and the manner in which we got them does not indicate to me that everything is solved. Yeah, you want to beat the teams in front of you. I've said that all year long. I'm saying that I'm not projecting clean sheets as a result of these clean sheets.
Mm-hmm.
So
do you want me to handle number 2 since you did number 1? All right, hold on one second. Let's get down to all right. The EPL needs to seriously examine VAR in the offseason and change the implementation. Alex, your thoughts?
As the usual VAR defender on this podcast, it might surprise you to say that actually I'm not really pouring any cold water on this. I think the EPL's implementation of VAR is awful. I think that VAR, frankly, any sort of video review in any sport is poorly implemented. I was talking about this with Katie during the Duke Houston game last night, where they were like really bringing it down to snail's pace to try and decide if the ball like grazed the shorts of a guy's inner thigh. And I was like, if it's taking this long and you have to go this slow, it is not a clear error. Stick with the call on the field. Yeah. And so this really comes about with Brighton, right? There were 3 different penalty shouts, right, at some point, and I thought they got all of them wrong. I think that Matoma probably should have come back and been a penalty. I thought Ramsey could have been. The Villa one absolutely should have been. And my point at the end of the day is like, no one trusts it. We're always getting it wrong. We feel like when the referee goes to the monitor, it's like a guaranteed thing. Or the flip side, the VAR never wants to overturn the referee and make him look bad or something of that sort. Like, let's simplify all of this. You are allowed to look at it live speed. If you cannot decide in 10 seconds, 15 seconds live speed that it's an incorrect call, then just stick with it. And that would allow the referees, to the point that you always make, feel more empowered to call it on the field. And then we wouldn't be sitting in this echo chamber right now just talking about decisions every single week. And I think that's the key for it. It almost seems like referees never want to call penalties anymore because they feel like they have the video to back them out, and then the video never wants to overturn them. So I have a huge problem with how they're doing it. I like video assistant review. I think it's worthwhile. I think that it helps more than it hurts, but you have to do it the right way, and they're not doing it the right way.
So it won't surprise you to learn that I don't pour any cold water on this at all, because I hate VAR and I hate replay in all sports. And like, the idea is fine. The idea actually is good. I understand they're trying to make everything better and they're trying to improve the game. But in almost every instance, it has made, in my opinion, it's made the game worse. Because, and I'll take, obviously this is a Aston Villa soccer podcast, so we're going to talk about that specifically. I'll take just one example because you covered pretty much all the bases. A goal scored in soccer, English football, whatever you want to say, is one of the most exciting things that you can see or experience, particularly if you're live or if you're with your friends or family or whatever and watching. Like, it is the most exciting thing because it's such a rare occurrence compared to, basketball, baseball, football, American football, whatever. So the amount of, or the feeling of unbridled joy that you have when you score is different than just about any other sporting experience you're going to have as a fan. VAR has eliminated that to an extent, because immediately now everybody goes nuts, but then 5 seconds later, the first thing you see everybody do is turn to the monitor to see if there's some sort of change or issue or VAR review to see if this thing's going to get chalked off for one reason or another. And so all the points you made are totally valid and good. From a fan's perspective, VAR is bad for the game for me because it takes at least some of that joy out of the goal, because the first thing you do is wait and see if there's a little box that comes up and says VAR review. and then you're going to sit and wait for a minute to 3 minutes and while they make a decision.
We're back. Keep going.
And we're back. So, Alex, as I said before you made your exit, the negative for me is that VAR hurts the sport because the fan experience is different. And now I'm looking at your stomach.
Yeah, I need to make sure my audio was tuned up. All right, we're good.
We are nailing it on this pod. Let's go.
Yeah, we're crushing it. Goddamn evenings. Okay.
All right, so that takes us to number 3, which I'll go ahead and take this one as well, Alex. We know who Unai's favorites are. Rodgers and Yuri start both matches. Kamara, Rashford, Konsa come on when we were in trouble against Forest. And one Sir Oliver George Watkins is no longer in the circle of trust. Alex, your thoughts?
I mean, this one's just down. This one's hard to argue. When you see Rashford, who came into Villa saying that he's a winger, not a number 9. Unai says Rashford is brought in to be a winger, not a number 9. And now he's starting ahead of Ali and scoring while doing it. And we've got the John Duran problem all over again. I mean, it just seems like this year, for whatever reason, Ali keeps getting knocked down and down the pecking order by whoever we bring in. And it's just a pattern that you don't want to see continue. We've talked ad nauseum about his mental fortitude or lack thereof when he seems to get challenged. And now we're at the business end of the season, and he just doesn't seem to be someone in back-to-back games that Unai feels like he can trust when the going gets tough. And you hear the chorus of people going, he's leading the team in goals and assists again. What is it? 14 goals and 12 assists or something like that. I took a quick scan on FBref today, and we're going to need to litigate his season at the end. We don't need to do that right now. But it did validate something that I've felt for a while, which is that a majority, not all, but a large majority of his goals have come against the very inferior opposition, the Ipswiches, the things of that sort, as opposed to our biggest games where he does seem to go missing. And so he was someone who could do no wrong for Unai Emery before, and it seemed like through all his trials and tribulations, he would get all the starts. We saw it with Duran a little bit before he left, and now I think we're seeing it with Rashford, where I'm not sure that Unai feels that he can trust him right now.
I was surprised, and I'll pour only a little bit of cold water on this, but the reason I don't pour a lot is because I was surprised to see Ali not start either of the last 2 games. And I know that you made the point that that Unai doesn't like to make changes, but like to squad rotation was what I thought the first non-start was. But then to not start either game does kind of make me wonder. That I can't pour cold water all over that one. So we'll see. I'll be interested to see what the boss does in Paris here. I think that'll be telling to an extent. But right now, I think that may be right. That Ollie Watkins is no longer one of the trusted guys in the locker room for Emery.
We'll get into Paris later, but spoiler. I think this is shaping up to be another Rashford start, just from what I've seen about what I've researched about PSG. But the next one, Chris, number 4, great results. We're hyped, but Villa got lucky in both these matches.
I pour some cold water because, I mean, there's always an element of luck to a lot of things, but especially to football or soccer. It's a sport that sort of lends itself to luck. Now, I'll say, and one thing I'll point out specifically is a lot of people, myself included, pointed out that for Forest, Nuno got the first half totally wrong, right? but Villa punished him for it. So like that's a good thing, So that I think that's what you need to focus on, because as much as they could have scored 4 or 5, we could have also scored 4 or 5. That first half was as dominant of 45 minutes as we've seen, and yep, they didn't have their striker. They had some injuries, but everybody has injuries at points in the season. I mean, at one point, Villa could barely field a back four. That's the way things go, and you play the guys in front of you. And Nuno got it totally wrong. But again, Villa then took it to Forest and dominated for those 45 minutes, and that's what got them the win. So that's why I don't just want to say that it's total luck and we shouldn't be happy with the results, or we need to temper our excitement over the results.
Yeah, I'm with you. I pour a little bit of cold water if the impetus for this question is someone being like, yeah, we're gonna roll through and win again all 10 for the rest of the season. Like,
right.
No, this is not evidence that we're about to go on some amazing run. But like, we were very, very good for 3 out of 4 halves in these 2 games. I will magnify, I suppose, the second half of Forest by saying I texted a friend of mine who supports Forest by saying, as good as we were in the first half, I think they were as good, if not maybe better in the second. But to your point, this game could have been 5-5. Easily could have been 5-1 Villa, to the same extent that it could have been 5-1 Forest if the ball bounces a little bit of a different way. I don't really know what this means for anything, but I will just add that Forest have now won only 4 of 17 games against the top half of the table. One of those, which was Aston Villa. So like they've really made their living this year off of beating poor teams. But yeah, so I think we should be feeling good. I feel a lot more optimistic going into Paris off the back of these 2 wins than I did before. I would not say that we got lucky in both. Maybe there is an element of luck in Forest more so than Brighton.
There's always an element of luck, to some extent.
Yep.
Is all I'll say. Like, yes. So we agree on that one pretty well. All right. Yeah. We'll go to number 5 now. The league is now Villa's best path back to Europe this year, and this was going to come up, I think, pretty much for the rest of the year. We'll be
yeah. I mean, we're
until it's decided, right?
We're going to oscillate, I think, every single game until we're eliminated from any of these competitions. I might actually say yes. I might not pour much cold water on this one, just because Crystal Palace in the FA Cup has clearly had Unai Emery's number. I mean, it just seems like every single time Unai plays Oliver Glasner, he not just gets beat, gets smacked.
Yep.
And no other team in the league seems to have that effect on us the way Crystal Palace does.
Newcastle.
And I can't explain it. Newcastle. Yeah, actually, you're right. Yeah. You're right. Newcastle is the other one. And so for me, this is more looking down the table. Bournemouth hasn't won in 5 or 6. They seem to be plummeting away. Brighton is stumbling. They haven't won in 4. Fulham, definitely great win against Liverpool earlier today. But they've been kind of hit or miss recently, and Villa has all of them to play. So, if you think that Villa, let's say, is unlikely to advance in the Champions League against PSG, and let's say they are underdogs in the FA Cup against Crystal Palace, then you've got a fully rested and big squad that you can rotate for this stretch run against all these teams that you're playing around. Now, the question doesn't say Champions League. Europa League is in play, Conference League is in play, which gives you a couple places that you can drop down, even with Newcastle's matches in hand, even with our inferior goal difference, that I actually do think now, on the back of these 2 wins, the league might be our best path back to Europe.
Well, I think that is probably true. So I don't pour a lot of cold water on it, at least as of today, particularly because of the way the results broke today. everything pretty much went the way Villa needed it to go to position themselves for a European place, and also given that, I mean, you may go as far down as seventh or I'm sorry, eighth potentially for Conference League, depending on how results go. It may be their best path, and I think that one of the things that we talked about in the last pod is that every game, pretty much outside of the Southampton game, who got relegated today, earliest squad ever to be relegated, is pretty much a 6-pointer in one way or another. Either somebody that's right below Villa in the table or somebody that's above Villa in the table. So the stretch run here is going to be interesting. Like we mentioned last time, and like we talked about a little earlier here in this podcast, Villa seemed to be healthy at exactly the right time and maybe peaking at the right time. So we can maybe take a little bit of solace or get excited about that. And now, like you said, Emery has a full complement of players to rotate the squad to handle this upcoming set of fixtures. So as of today, Sunday, April 6th, that right now the league looks like the best path to qualify for a European position.
Agreed. So, Chris, since you just kind of hinted at it here with the stretch run, tell me, in your cold water opinion, how many more points are we taking in the league this season?
So, funny enough, Alex, I actually made myself a chart. I did it on the 13th of January when the team was not playing particularly well. So
Are you going to stick with those predictions?
What's that?
Are you going to stick with those predictions?
No, I'm not, because as it stands, I only had them coming away with 57 points in total. And they obviously now sit at 51. So they're outperforming my prediction on the 13th. And this was also before Rashford and Asensio came in. Mm-hmm. So there's a big change to the team there. So yeah, we're already 6 points ahead of where I thought they'd be at this point. So even if I assume the results I think that are going to happen, I believe that Villa will finish on 63 points. So that's a total of 12 more points this season.
So
12 from 18.
Yep. Okay. Yeah. So I am somewhere in that range as well. I wrote down between 10 and 12 points.
Yeah.
And so we have Southampton, which I'm chalking up as 3. If it's not, we're done. Newcastle at home, City away. I still have both of those as losses. I know City has been faltering, did not look great today, but still going to the Etihad, hard place. Let's mark both of those down. And Newcastle is just on a roll. Fulham, I'm giving us 3 more points for a win. Between Bournemouth and Spurs, I would love to say that this is 6, but Ange also is one of those managers that seems to get the best of Unai. So I'm going to say between these two, we'll get 4 points. And then United at Old Trafford on the last day, I hate to say it, but I'm saying that we only get 1. Now, Spurs and United in particular could both be wins. And so if we get, 9 points between those 3 games, Bournemouth, Spurs, and United, that would push it to 15. But you just got to assume that there's going to be a couple slips in there, especially with the Champions League and all that kind of stuff. So that's why I said between 10 to 12.
Yep.
So by the way, those numbers that I gave would add up to 11. So you change one of those to a draw, or you change one to a win. That's kind of the range.
Yep. And I believe I know where you're going to come down on this one. Number 7, our final cold water coming out of Brighton and Forest is goal difference does matter, and it will hurt Aston Villa this year.
Yeah. Yeah. Like we're so far behind every team around us, and it's so tight. You basically give everyone 1 more point.
Correct.
Right. And so I think I know what you're going to say, in that you're pouring cold water on this because what are the odds that we actually finish on the same number of points where that winds up being a factor? But I think that psychologically it matters because you still feel like you're chasing and does that force you to press and all that kind of stuff? These are things that you can't quantify. And so I get to say, yeah, it happened no matter what. But yeah, the way the table is shaping up with how tight it is and how many 6-pointers we have, I don't think that you can pour cold water on the fact that our inferior goal difference could wind up making a very significant difference for us at the end of the season.
Well, I don't disagree that it could make a difference. I don't. But I tend to think more like Unai Emery and worry about getting the 3 instead of, goal differential. And so I think that is the difference, is the struggles early on, like up until the squad pretty much January transfer window and everybody got pretty well fit come a couple of weeks ago, is really when the team started playing really well. That I think that's the difference, and that's the reason that we have such a poor goal differential. Now, I will say that it is, particularly with all the 6-pointers that we have coming up, it is unlikely that we're going to end up on the exact same point total as one of these teams around us. But there's no denying that if we do, we lose, because I think we're like 17 goals off. So there's no getting around that. So yeah, the easy answer is go win your games, and you're going to be fine. As easy as that. Easy. I'm doing air quotes for those of you not watching. As easy as that may be, go win and don't worry about it. So like that would be what Emery would say, I'm sure. I don't care if we win 3-1 or 3-2 or 4-3 or 5-4, as long as at the end of the day, Aston Villa is the team on top. So, but yeah, there's no question that the negative goal differential, or we're right on, we're even now. Yeah, we're even now. But the fact that we have such a poor goal differential could end up costing us a place. That I can't deny that. That's a straight fact. So, but I'm more concerned about results and effectiveness of the players than I am about goal differential. And right now, things are much improved, I would say, over the past couple of months. So I'm excited for what's coming ahead, both in the league, in the Champions League, and in the Cup.
Hey, 7 more games, you could at least get it to a plus 10 or something respectable. So yeah, we'll see. But with that, and since we kind of got on the topic there, larger implication on the season, we're now, with their draw today, 1 point back of City in 5th. But to your point, we have a 0 versus 17 goal difference, so a tie will not do it. And then Newcastle, who's just behind us, have 2 matches in hand. I should have done the research to know who those were against, but I did not.
That's okay. I won't hold it against you.
They look strong. It's gonna take a lot, but thankfully we play both of them within our next 3. So, Chris, let's turn our attention now from the league to the gift that keeps on giving, and that is the Champions League. No longer the league phase, just the Champions League.
That's right.
There's your French wine, and let's talk about the Marco Asensio Derby Wednesday away, 3 p.m. in Paris, the city that you have always wished that you would be from, even if you will not admit it out loud on this podcast.
I don't know that's true.
You didn't say no. You just said I don't know. So I think that's as guilty as you could possibly be. So let's talk about how PSG got here, because I think their run through the Champions League has been a fairly interesting one. They started terribly. In the Clip, they were 1-1-3 in their first 5 losses to Arsenal, Atleti, and Bayern. They did beat Girona and drew PSV. And then in December, I believe it was, they played Salzburg, and they have not looked back. They've beat Salzburg City, Stuttgart, Brest twice, and then Liverpool. They had the shocking Liverpool loss in between by a combined score of 22-4, Chris.
Yeah.
And with the 2 legs against Liverpool, the combined XG was 4.2 to 1.8, which honestly feels even skewed towards Liverpool if you watch those 2 matches. And then when you look at just where they are overall and the run that they've been on, I mean, usually PSG is candidly faltering at this point in the season because they've got the league wrapped up and they've got nothing left to play for. Yeah, you eat that French cheese. But they just continue to roll and look better and better with every game. They have not lost the expected goals battle in any match in the league or Champions League since December 18th when they played at Monaco. And to that point, they have not been wasteful. Since they lost versus Bayern on November 26th, they have lost precisely once in all competitions, the 1-0 to Liverpool in Paris that they should have won. And they're winning all those games. They've only got 4 draws. Yeah. It's insane the run that they are on right now. They are peaking at the right time. They are the bettor's favorite to win the Champions League at this point. Now, granted, part of that is probably since they play us and the bettors don't really rate us all that highly, but still. So honestly, Chris, like I've got all my usual notes on their tactics, approach, style of play, players to look out for. But like, I'm going to pause there for a sec. What are you thinking as we go into this?
So when I prepped for this pod, I didn't realize just how long this stretch was. And you just mentioned it. It goes back to like before Thanksgiving or right around Thanksgiving that they've been winning just constantly. So I didn't realize, in part because I don't pay a ton of attention to Ligue 1, but
sure.
I didn't realize like just how well they were playing and for how long. I saw the Liverpool games, obviously in the Champions League, and I saw how slowly they started in the Calip, and that actually made me lulled me into a false sense of security in a way where I thought like, oh well, you know, they're going to scrape in or have to fight their way through or whatever it may be, but they seem to be just on absolute fire at the right time, and I'm terrified, frankly. Like they're really, really like crazy good. And I looked through your research, so I don't want to take away some of the notes that you have, but like the biggest thing to me, without getting into the tactics and all that of how they approach things, but it's just that it's not what we're accustomed to from PSG in the past, which was mostly like big name superstars, many of them, but not all of them, but many of them aging, and collecting big wages. Now they may have big wages still and all that, but
sure.
But this is a young team for the most part, that has a lot of players that that you'll recognize, but it's not what we're used to from the 2020, I think, was the last time they were in the Champions League final, if I remember right. So it's a remade squad from half a decade later. So to say it's going to be a challenge, I think, is an understatement.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. And maybe I'll talk about the players and then how they utilize them, actually, because that might flow a little better. They just have studs at every position, and they're young and they're athletic. They've got 4 guys in double figures with goals. Ousmane Dembele leads the way with 32, but Barco also has 18. They just brought in Kvaratskhelia in January from Napoli. Hell of a player. I think he's only like 22. And you just then go back. You've got Vitinha in the midfield, who is maybe should be getting credit as one of the best midfielders in the world now. Against the 2 legs versus Liverpool, he led all players in touches, successful passes in the opposition half, ball carries, ball carry distance. I saw a stat that he's got something like more completed passes in the Champions League than anyone bar like Busquets and Modric in previous years. They're young with Zaire Emery coming off the back, one of my favorite players from this past Euros in Fabian Ruiz. And then in the back, you've got Marquinhos, savvy Brazilian, Hakimi on the right back, phenomenal player. But actually, who leads them all in minutes is 23-year-old center back William Bacho from Ecuador. So again, like another young athletic player, studs at every single position. So how do they use them? Dominate possession, suffocate the life out of teams. Probably not a surprise with Luis Enrique and the Barcelona pedigree that he comes from. He's going to obviously possess the ball and keep them high. They do have almost 10% more possession at home and 7 more shots per game. Maybe not surprising, but I think that Paris were particularly going to be under it. On the off chance that their opponent does get forward, they play the offside trap effectively. If that doesn't work, they counter even more devastatingly. And you look at all that pace in their front line. Dembele, burner. Kvaratskhelia, burner. Hakimi coming out of the right back spot, burner. And so with Dembele and Hakimi on the right-hand side, probably no surprise. They attack down that side 42% of the time. They're not super aggressive defensively, so I'm not sure that we should be like ready for a super high aggressive high press, but they are strong at preventing set piece opportunities. We'll see what Austin McPhee cooks up. Really the only thing that I could seem to find anyone saying that they're weak against defensively is just they give up a decent number of scoring chances, a decent expected goal margin for the teams that they play. They just score a ton more on the other end. It's like Unai Emery through and through. But we have to hope that there will be opportunities for, let's say, a Marcus Rashford, a Morgan Rogers on the counter. And so that probably leads a little bit into the Villa side of who I'm going to play. But again, Chris, anything to add? Any areas for optimism, or are we shaking in our French boots?
Well, I think like if we can cling to one thing, it's that we do have, and you and I have said this before, we do have a pretty brilliant tactician on our side coming up with ways to counter what Paris are going to try and do. I think when I was looking through like the who scored numbers and information, I think the funny thing, and you kind of just alluded to it, the funny thing that struck me was like the weaknesses they list is that PSG don't do well preventing scoring opportunities. They don't do well in aerial duels, and they don't do well protecting leads. And so like it's almost like a mirror image of Aston Villa, because you would say all 3 of those things are flaws in Aston Villa. So I think for that reason, this could set up to be an interesting game. And I think you kind of mentioned how you think the lineup's going to go. And I think there are opportunities, or there may be opportunities to counteract the speed and attack of PSG if Villa can get on the ball, quickly counter, use the speed that Villa have to create quick chances away from home. And I like Emery's never going to do this, but I think that playing and trying to get a draw here is not the worst idea in the world.
I totally agree.
If you can come away from Parc des Princes with the draw level coming back to Villa Park, you'd be thrilled. Now, like I've said, that's not in Unai Emery's DNA.
Even a 1-goal deficit, perhaps.
Yeah.
Honestly,
Emery's going to go for it. Like he's going to create chances where he believes they can. But like you mentioned, I mean, they hold as much as 68% possession at times in
70 plus in a lot of games.
In Champions League is what I was getting, like against Champions League competition, so like, if they're beating up and holding the ball 70% of the time against the bottom of League on, like, yeah, sure, I get it. But when you're doing that in Champions League, that's a different story. The one thing like that I'll point out from their games against Liverpool is that Liverpool haven't looked great since the new year, pretty much. You know, at one point, people were talking about a possible quadruple, and right now, they're honestly lucky that they've built such a lead in the league because they're coming back down to earth, or at least it seems like they are, especially given the result today. So I just it's going to be a tough task away against this team, and PSG are rightfully the favorites to win. You called that a couple of weeks ago, but I think that if we can, like I said, if we can put anything in our bag and say we feel good about it, it's that we have Unai Emery to come up with a way to break them down and beat them. So I expect potentially an open game where Villa are, well, open from one side, where Villa are playing on the counter. So I think opportunities may be there on the counter for Aston Villa, given what I think and you seems like you think PSG are going to try and do.
Yeah. The other thing that I'll add to that, obviously have Unai Emery. I don't believe that he's someone who gets extra motivation from PSG fired me. I don't think that he needs that. But there is experience in this Villa team that makes me think that they won't necessarily be crushed by the moment. Asensio obviously been here before. Marcus Rashford had success in the Champions League, although not a ton with Manchester United. Right. Just had to sneak that one in there. Yep. Kamara has obviously played PSG many times before at Marseille. You look at someone like Luka Dean, who played at PSG at one point, you know, maybe a little motivation. Ian Maatsen was in the Champions League final just last year. Yep. And then Emi Martinez, obviously, we know all the experience that he's had. Pau Torres has been in games like this before. So, you know, the moment shouldn't be too big for at least a handful of the guys that are in the lineup. And so hopefully that works on our behalf. I would say if you're looking for an example in Villa's recent winning streak to say that they can do this, I would say look at the Brighton match. That's kind of the closest comp to what I expect here. A lot of PSG attack, PSG attack, PSG attack, and Villa just need to be ruthless, to your point, on the counter and take advantage of probably the limited opportunities that I expect us to see.
Yeah. I mean, I think they'll be limited in that they'll have less than PSG will have, less opportunities. But I don't know that it's going to be.
I think they'll be decent.
I don't know that we're going to be without opportunities. Yeah.
Yes, I would agree with you there. Yeah. So why don't you tell me? It sounds like we think that Villa are going to play the same way. Yeah. Who do you think is going to be in there to play it?
I think that, well, it starts with Emi Martinez. I think that given what we saw against Forest in terms of it at the back, I think it's going to be Cash, Konsa, Pau, and Luka Dean. I think that the rotation in the back four from the last match is probably going to dictate what we see in the next one. Tielemans and Kamara, I think, are shoo-ins to start in this. I don't think there's any chance, unless somebody goes down with an injury, that it'll be anybody else in that defensive midfield. Then in attack is where I think things are going to get interesting. And I don't know if you're going to have the same sort of lineup that I have, but I have I have JJ, Asensio, Morgan Rogers, and Marcus Rashford up top.
So mine is slightly different. I have Emi in the back. I agree with you on the back four. Nothing about the way I've seen and read that PSG plays makes me think that there's someone who are playing in a bunch of crosses. So I'm not really too concerned about Mings's superior aerial ability to Pau Torres. I think I want Pau Torres' ability to not only read the game, but also spring the counter. I think his passing ability could be key to the opportunities that we get. And then, yes, I agree. Luka Dean on the left-hand side, a little bit more defensive security, I think, compared to Ian Maatsen. Although, and to your point, I think the rotation is key. It would be interesting, though, with Dembele's and Hakimi's pace. Ian Maatsen, obviously, a lot quicker than Luka Dean, so maybe you throw him in there. Kamara and Yori. And then in front of them, I actually have JJ on the left, McGinn in the middle for a little extra defensive strength, and Morgan Rogers on the right. And then I think that Asensio winds up being, again, that second half, last 30, 35 minutes super sub for John McGinn to hopefully spring something if ideally we're still in a 0-0, 1-0 situation. And then I, too, have Marcus Rashford up top. And the reason for that, I've talked a couple different times now about how much PSG attack down that right-hand side and do so at pace. I just don't think that you say I bring it up every single time, and I will again. I don't think that we can carry Marcus Rashford's lack of defensive effort on the left wing. So I think it has to be a him or Ali situation up at the number 9. And I think he's been so good at the number 9, like timing those runs, getting in behind the back line. Obviously, PSG are athletic with Bacho back there, but I think that Rashford can burn almost anybody in the league. And when those two guys get in on goal right now with time to think, I do trust Marcus Rashford more likely to put it in than Ollie Watkins. So
a compliment for Rashford. Look at you.
Two compliments. I'm giving him plenty of compliments. Just because I have one thing that makes me think that he can't necessarily play left mid against an attacking team doesn't mean that I don't like the guy. He's been great.
I actually think your lineup makes a lot of sense. I wouldn't be surprised to see that. That makes sense to me. So where do you come out on a score, given everything we've talked about here? What do you think? How do you think things are going to shake out?
So it's funny. I've gone over this score a bunch of times in my head, and I really could see so many different permutations. There's the 4-0 to Paris option. There is the 0-0 or 1-1 where we get back to Villa Park. There is an odd Bayern Munich 1-0 victory in there. But I think, Villa are liable to give up goals. I don't think that we'll keep a clean sheet away in Paris against this offense. I would love to be optimistic and say it's going to be a 2-1 loss, because I think a 1-goal deficit going back to Villa Park we have a chance against. I think it's going to be 3-1 PSG.
Well, let me see. I'm going to for those of you not watching, I'm going to take a sip of my 2020 Syrah here from the northern region of France.
For those of you watching, Chris has also been eating French cheese this entire time.
Yes, we have. It's a terrible pairing. It's Beaufort cheese from Savoy. So you don't normally want to pair these two, but it's what I have. Normally you want to pair that with a white, like a Chardonnay. You're welcome for the tip, everybody. That tastes like 3-1. I have 3-1 as well. 3-1 PSG. So that sends us back to Villa Park with a 2-goal negative differential. It'd be tough to come back. I hope I'm wrong. I hope you're wrong. I'd love for it to be a draw or even to come back with 1-goal differential. I think like that's more than doable and able to come back. We're able to come back from that potentially coming home. But I like reading the statistics of this team this morning and this afternoon when I was getting ready for this terrifies me. So that's where I come up with 3-1.
They're a really good team, and I much like you, I was actually with the recent run kind of talking myself into you know what, they 1-0 Liverpool against a bad Liverpool team, like we got this, we could get a draw there, no problem. And I was starting to kind of doubt my earlier assertions, and then I read everything and I was like, oh God. So we'll see. I'm with you. I think if we can come back to Villa Park, no away goal rule, by the way. So like it 2-1, 3-2, like that doesn't really matter. If we can come back just 1 goal behind or 0-0, I mean, God forbid, what 1-0 up, there's everything to play for next week. 2 goals, I think, becomes a bit more difficult, particularly with their ability to possess the ball. But we do know that we'll get more opportunities at home and limit them a little bit more just based on their home road splits. So we'll see. We are going to do our best. Chris and I are both traveling for work this week, both over Wednesday and Thursday, and then have stuff Friday and Saturday. So one of us may try and do a quick off the top of the dome solo recap later this week, but unlikely to get a recap or a preview of Villa's next EPL match. So more than likely we'll be back next Sunday with a recap of both and a preview of whatever is going to happen when Villa come home against PSG next week. So
yeah, unfortunate. It's a busy time of year for Villa. It's a busy time of year for you and me, Alex. That's all we can say.
Well, Chris, this was fun. Hopefully we're both wrong, and hopefully it's a good game that we get to watch on Wednesday. But until we speak again, sir, you? Oh, I thought I was really kind of teeing you up for like until next time. Piper, no.
I didn't read it. I'm sorry. Piper, no. Bonsoir.
I'll see you, man.